For decades, a name has whispered through classified corridors, a shadow unit inside the U.S. government convinced that the UFO phenomenon isn't extraterrestrial, but something far older and far darker. Tonight we follow those whispers into the sealed files of the Collins elite and ask what terrified them enough to fight an enemy they believed came straight from hell. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Common Anomaly podcast. I'm your host, Stuart James. Joining me today is Clayton James. How's it going, brother?
It's going good. It's cold out there, though.
It is super cold today. Yeah. Freezing. Freezing cold is what it is.
Yeah. Winter really hit us abruptly.
Yeah, that's right. So luckily we're crammed into our tiny little cozy studio here for what is our second last episode of the season. How does that feel?
I'm amazed at how much the show has grown and how much we've managed to accomplish in a year.
I know. I'm really happy. Part of me is just surprised we're still going, to be honest. When I first started this, I thought it'd be a couple of weeks, and then I would hear something about Mysterious Universe one way or another, and then it would be done. But we just kept going, and here we are a full year later. An entire 2 seasons, I guess. The first season was basically just getting our feet wet. And then we kind of found our stride, more or less. Worked our way through a lot of technical hiccups. But then, we really kind of built the brand. And I'm quite happy with what we've achieved. But feels really good to be wrapping up the year. I think next week, we are going to have an episode next week. That'll be our last episode for the season. But it'll be more of a season ender, kind of end cap holiday party episode. We'll let our hair down. We won't take it too seriously. And we'll just kind of have fun with that one and kind of recap our most fun moments from the year and just have some fun. Let's get into this one this week, the Collins Elite. So you really wanted to do this, I think, after our Padre Pio episode, right? Felt like a nice kind of lead off into this, hey?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked so much about, UFOs on the show in previous episodes, extraterrestrials, and we've also had some episodes focusing more on the occult, demons. And I like this topic because it's where those two subjects kind of meet.
Yeah, it's the convergence point. There's blue beam stuff in here. There's secret space program stuff. Let's just put it in a nutshell for those out there who might not be familiar with the basic idea of the Collins Elite. So the Collins Elite is basically this theoretical insider group within United States government military-industrial complex.
The Department of Defense.
Yes, that believes the UFO phenomenon that we're all experiencing is not actually extraterrestrial in origin, but is demonic in origin. That these are not aliens from another planet somewhere in the galaxy. They're demons. They're agents of hell and Satan from another dimension. What do you think about this idea, just off the top?
I think that sounds like a really, really far out thing for the government, the U.S. government, to be investigating. But at the same time, we've had things like Project Stargate, investigations into psychic phenomenon and the potential weaponization of it. So yes, this does seem like, if there was something at all to lend credence to this story, the government would throw some taxpayer dollars into investigating it. I'm sure they would. Yeah.
Well, and if I can remember back in time well enough, I remember when I first became aware of this idea. Initially, I was like, what? Isn't just the idea of aliens from outer space crazy enough that we have to have this other explanation that they're actually coming from some kind of hell dimension layered on top of it? But it's one of those things where it's a rabbit hole all its own. And as you start unpacking it, as you start digging into it, the more parallels you find, the more connecting points you find.
Yeah.
And it's a fun journey to go on. We're going to be referencing this book. I think we both read it, ended up reading it this week from Nick Redfern called Final Events.
Yeah, this would be pretty much the primary source on all things Collins Elite.
Yeah, yeah.
And, the author of the book, Nick Redfern, he describes not having ever heard of this group before his starting his investigation into this book. Basically, he had interviewed this fellow named Raymond Bosch.
Yeah, a pastor, right?
Yeah, he's an Anglican priest, and he's also quite a well-known UFO researcher.
Hmm.
Raymond Bosch was telling him that in 1991, he had been contacted by two physicists who worked for the Department of Defense. He doesn't name them, he simply refers to them as A and B. And they were very concerned about the ethical implications of certain projects the Department of Defense was working on. They outlined attempts by the US government to contact non-human entities. He was thinking extraterrestrials, but they said, no, not extraterrestrials. Non-human interdimensional entities is what he described. Demons.
Yeah.
And they were using occult means to contact them.
Right.
Basically to
Like
form...
mediumship and channeling and seances, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or even rituals to contact gods like Pan, that sort of thing.
And these two officials basically approached Bosch because he was, A, UFO researcher, and B, because he was a priest. And they were really concerned about the ethical and spiritual implications of all this.
Yeah.
But Raymond Bosch, he kind of sat on that story because it sounded so unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
crazy, you can say it.
Yeah, a little crazy.
It sounds crazy.
But anyway, kind of the mid-2000s, Raymond Bosch has a series of interviews with this author, Nick Redfern. And he relays this story he'd heard to Nick Redfern. And Nick Redfern is intrigued.
Yeah.
He says, okay, I'll bite. I'll follow up on this. So he puts some feelers out with amongst his own contacts in the United States military.
Yeah.
And eventually this retired intelligence operative, his name was Ralph Summers, he points Nick Redfern to the Offutt Air Force Base. He says, you want to look into the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska.
Right.
So there seems to be a lot of knowledge about this program.
Yeah.
In that area. So Nick Redfern, he phones up Offutt Air Force Base, basically says he's an author, he's a journalist, he's chasing a story, he'd like to speak to someone, and he's bounced around to different offices. Eventually, he makes he's greeted by a representative of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. And Nick Redfern says he decides to do something he's never done before on a story like this. He just puts all his cards out on the table.
Yeah,
he
no
says,
deception, just straight out there.
I'm chasing this story that has to do with U.S. officials believing the UFO phenomenon could be explained in demonic terms.
Yeah.
There's a long, awkward pause on this call. And this representative says, is this a story you intend to publish?
Yeah.
Nick says, well, yeah. Do you have a publisher yet? Well, maybe. And he says, well, that's all really interesting, but nothing like that goes on here. Click.
Right.
The phone call ends. So Nick Redfern, he's thinking, okay, this was a dead end.
Yeah.
But then 3 days later, he receives a phone call from the Offutt Air Force Base, from someone else at the Offutt Air Force Base. This woman greets him, says, Mr. Redfern, I understand you want to meet with someone from the Collins Elite. And he says, the Collins Elite?
What is that?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What is that? And she says, the devil, UFOs, your story, the story.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah. And this really gets his attention.
Yeah.
Right.
So the two talk, and this woman says she's going to put him in touch with a man named Richard Duke, who's going to help him with this story. So about a week later, Nick Redfern drives out to Albuquerque, and he meets this Richard Duke at a restaurant, and he's like this elderly retired man,
Mm-hmm.
and Richard Duke greets him and says, "So you got me through one of Bosch's people, did you?"
Right. Yeah.
And Redfern, he says, "Well, kinda, sorta, in a roundabout way." He says, "Okay, good, good. Let's talk about the Collins elite." So the two sit and talk for hours. This Richard Duke talks Nick Redfern's ear off about this secret program that has existed within the government since the early 50s.
Yeah. Well, and I guess when it started, it wasn't really a program per se. It wasn't official. It started as a kind of
Yeah,
a loose group
it
of
was.
kind of interested parties.
Yeah,
With,
so basically the whole thing arose out of some Department of Defense investigations into the activities of Mr. Jack Parsons,
yeah.
who we've talked about on a previous episode
Was
on the
involved
secret
in
space program.
Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yeah, he was one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory by day. By night, the man was an occult practitioner,
Yeah.
and he had been under
To
investigation.
put it mildly.
Yeah.
Like he was into some pretty
Yeah,
pretty
he was into
gnarly
some
stuff.
he was into some pretty weird stuff. So he had been under investigation by the Department of Defense for some time because, he had been kicked out of the JPL because, well, he had some suspected communist leanings.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing very fast and loose with classified documents.
Yeah.
And he was about to leave the country. The day before he died, he was about to leave the country to go and work for Israel. And there was some concern he would be
An Israeli spy.
yeah, and he would be sharing, all sorts of secrets with the Israeli government. This was right before his death.
Oh.
So there was a lot of investigation into Jack Parsons, and one of the things they uncovered were his various occult practices. The man was a protege of Aleister Crowley, who was basically one of the godfathers of modern day occultism.
Yeah.
He founded this occult system. It's called the Lema. We can get into all that on a different episode. But yeah, there was, and we've talked about Aleister Crowley before on the show on our episode on gray aliens. We've spoken about how in 1918, Aleister Crowley, he had conducted this ritual in New York called the Amelantra working, in which it said he
That's right.
kind of summoned this entity called Lamb.
Yeah. And what did Lamb look like?
Basically looked like a gray alien.
A gray alien. Yeah. Which is that first kind of inflection point where you're like, oh, this idea sounded really absurd. But then you're like, wait a minute. Aleister Crowley contacts this being through an occult ritual.
Yeah.
This entity from another dimension that just happens to look like a gray alien.
Yeah.
And this is in an era, this is like 1930s, 1940s, right before the big UFO explosion in the United States.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the threads that this group was working with, because so Aleister Crowley, he had channeled this entity Lamb. Now Aleister Crowley did express some regret over that ritual. He was saying that contacting these interdimensional entities could be a very valuable and enlightening spiritual practice, but it should be approached with extreme caution and restraint.
Well, because the fear is that in that ceremony, they basically opened a door.
Yeah, so Aleister Crowley was afraid that he had nudged open some sort of door and had let something into our world. Now, Jack Parsons, a few decades later in the 40s, Jack Parsons being, a disciple of Aleister Crowley, he decides he wants to continue that work. And him and his friend, L. Ron Hubbard, yes, that L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, they were good friends and partners in this occult ritual magic. They decided they wanted to conduct another ritual. They called it the Babylon working. Basically what Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were trying to do, they were trying to summon what they called an elemental or moon child, the avatar of the goddess of Babylon. And according to Parsons, the ritual worked. They conducted weeks of rituals, and Parsons exclaimed, "The gate is open, and the guardians salute thee. I have my elemental."
Yeah.
All of
Which
this
took the
in,
form of just this very beautiful woman that entered his life,
yeah,
which he decided was this elemental,
yes. And
through whatever lens he's looking through.
yes, that being a woman named Betty Northrup
Yeah.
was the personification of this elemental who became Jack Parsons' wife. Interestingly enough, this Betty Northrup, who was Jack Parsons' wife, L. Ron Hubbard did end up running off with her.
Yeah.
And L. Ron Hubbard ended up running off with all of Jack Parsons' money.
Yeah.
The two
Yeah.
owned a business together.
That was a really interesting story. I thought,
Yeah.
how messed up are these people?
Yeah.
And just so we distill that into context. So Jack Parsons, a follower of Aleister Crowley, business partner that had this really weird relationship with L. Ron Hubbard,
Mhm.
performed all kinds of crazy, odd occult practices. He also worked for JPL and NASA. He was said to have conducted a ritual sacrifice before each rocket launch in order to invoke the god Pan. He had an above top secret clearance. He's deep in the DoD. Who is this man? Did you have this moment reading this book where you're like, holy crap?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on
It's
in this?
pretty wild.
Because you think of NASA as being this very, excuse me, but kind of stiff, iron shirt, button down, just the facts. Everything's about science and the pursuit of truth and human enlightenment through the pursuit of science and astronomy. But there's all this weird occult, dark magic stuff right under the surface.
Yeah.
With the major players involved.
Yeah, actually,
it's bizarre.
There's this great story about Jack Parsons. Like, after L. Ron Hubbard stole all the money from the business they owned together, they owned a business selling yachts. Yeah. And it made them quite a lot of money. But anyway, L. Ron Hubbard, he begins a relationship with Jack Parsons' wife. The two run off together with all the money from the business, and they're going to sail off together in this yacht. And there's this story about Jack Parsons conducting some sort of ritual to summon a storm.
Yeah, that's right.
To force their yacht back to shore.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff.
It's wild, right? So they're rocket scientists, but they're also like dark sorcerers, summoning storms and cursing their failed business partners. Like, what is happening?
There's a few characters in this story as the decades go on that are described as dark sorcerers. Anyway, so you've got this investigation by the Department of Defense into the activities of Jack Parsons for all the reasons we just mentioned. Yeah. He's into some odd stuff. At the same time as Jack Parsons conducts this ritual, this Babylon working.
Yeah.
Immediately after this is when the UFO phenomenon begins.
Yeah.
You have
Roswell.
You begin having all these UFO sightings. And all of this enraged Aleister Crowley, by the way.
Yeah.
All of this absolutely enraged him. He was saying that this summoning of entities has to be approached with great restraint. He described Parsons, once one of his best proteges, as a reckless fool.
Which is strange comments coming from Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
Right? For him to be saying, hey, we should be careful with this. We shouldn't be too reckless. Like, that doesn't sound like Aleister Crowley to me. Right? Yeah. So this must be pretty dangerous stuff we're talking about.
He said Parsons is a reckless fool and L. Ron Hubbard is a shameless con man. Right. Actually, I agree with him on both of these points. Never thought I'd say it. I agree with Aleister Crowley. But the concern was, and Aleister Crowley expressed this concern.
Basically, they opened the gates of hell.
He said he had nudged open a door.
Yeah.
But what Jack Parsons did was kick it open, knock it down, leave it open forever.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, after Jack Parsons died in that explosion in his lab, which was the day before he was supposed to fly off to Israel, interestingly enough.
Right.
A lot of theories about that. But right after he died...
CIA.
Yeah. Right after he died, the UFO phenomenon intensified. You had swarms of these things being sighted around Washington, D.C. This is verified. There's interviews and transcripts confirming this.
Yeah.
So at the same time...
That's the same event that just recently was not verified, but there was veridical evidence in that... what's that woman's name who's new on the scene? Who reviewed all the old plates, all the old astronomy plates?
Oh, jeepers, I don't have her name at the
It's
moment.
escaping me. Yeah, I didn't have it prepared. But it occurred to me that one of her findings in one of the, if you know what I'm talking about, those old astronomical plates from the 50s
Yeah, yep.
that she audited and found, anomalous lights. This is the reason she was looking at this, because it's an era pre-satellite. So it's before mankind had objects in space.
Hmm.
And she found these transient imprints. So supposedly unidentified objects spotted in space by our telescopes that we just didn't notice because it was just noise in the data, right?
Yeah, we
We
talked.
couldn't detect these things until we had AI to scan through these massive data sets of these old
Yeah, and
plates.
and we were talking on a previous episode about how there was a correlation between these transient objects appearing and nuclear tests.
Yeah,
Like they would converge around the times and locations of nuclear
yeah.
tests.
But there was a plate. There's a particular sighting of one of these transient anomalies that was spotted the day before in space. This exact sighting in Washington that you're talking
Okay,
about. Yeah,
okay. But anyway, you've got, aside from the investigation into the activities of Jack Parsons, you've also got a concurrent investigation into this UFO phenomenon that started. So you've got these different threads, and these various Department of Defense officials begin comparing notes. And after Jack Parsons' death, when this phenomenon really starts intensifying, I believe it was 15 or so individuals are summoned to Washington because we've got these two threads that seem to be connecting.
yeah,
And they're basically said, okay, this is off the books, but is there anything to this?
right.
Are these two things connected in any way?
Yeah,
So they are basically given an office and relocated to Washington, D.C., and they're tasked with investigating whether these occult rituals that Crowley and Parsons were conducting are in any way connected to this UFO phenomenon, which is beginning to explode all over the country.
yeah.
And this group becomes known as the Collins Elite. They're named the Collins Elite just because one of the members came from like this little podunk town in New York called Collins.
Yeah, I was surprised how boring that story was, because I remember skimming through the book being like, there's got to be an explanation here of where this name came from, right? And I finally found it. Yeah, and it's just, oh, this one dude who was part of the group was from this place called Collins.
Yeah, and
And
it's
I was
just a
like,
middle of nowhere town that
yeah,
where nothing. Everyone works in like the cheese industry
yeah,
apparently, and
exactly. Yeah,
there
it
was
was all
this
about
joke.
cheese.
Yeah, there was this joke that because now he's part of this elite group, he's the elite of Collins.
Right,
He's the
yeah.
one person from Collins who didn't
Yeah,
become a cheesemonger.
it's almost like it was a working title that just
Yeah.
stuck. Yeah,
Yeah, well, this was a very unofficial group. Off
yeah,
the books, they received funding, but it was all funneled through various other government agencies. Everything
that's
had
right.
to be
Yeah,
strictly off the books because it's too crazy sounding. Anyway, this
yeah.
group,
This couldn't end up being a line item on a budget that came before Congress or anything, right? It had to be under wraps, above top secret.
yeah, but I mean, it's believable.
Yeah.
It's believable because we have things like MK Ultra, Project Stargate, and Operation Often.
Well, and even the psychic spies and all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like
and
no stone unturned, right?
yeah, at one point they do actually collaborate with officials working on Operation Often, the Collins Elite too.
Hmm.
But anyway, this group has been operating still to this day since the 50s.
Yeah. Well, and for me, the next phase when you kind of open your mind to this idea is, okay, what are the parallels in just the behavior? If we look at the abduction phenomenon, how are these quote unquote aliens engaging with humanity? They abduct us against our will. They come and kidnap us from our bedrooms at night. They apparently perform experimentation on us, torture us,
Mhm.
mutilate animals. Very little regard for what we would call human rights or any concern for our experience in the world. And for what purpose, we don't know. It's all clandestine. They don't come and approach us openly and honestly. It's all secretive. They're not good.
Yeah,
They're not good. So I can buy that they're evil in a sense, as we would qualify good and evil.
Mhm.
If I had to put them under one label, it would definitely be evil.
Yeah, but Yeah, one of the mandates of the Collins elite group was to discover what is the purpose, what is the intent.
What is their interest in
Yeah,
humanity?
regardless of whether they're demonic or they're extraterrestrial, the phenomenon itself exists.
Yeah.
What is the intent? So the Collins elite, they drew a lot from the Project Blue Book that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
The official, investigation into UFO sightings. They
Yeah.
drew a lot on that, and they would follow up with the people that were part of those stories.
Hmm.
But they also,
But they were examining everything through this very particular lens,
yeah,
which was their Judeo-Christian interpretation of, are they demonic?
yeah, and what they were looking for was common threads in all of these stories. I guess one of the most interesting things they found is, okay, the phenomenon exists. UFO sightings do exist. Alien abductions do exist. What are the commonalities in the people that this happens to? Usually they'll find people who have somehow opened themselves up to some sort of contact of a spiritual nature,
Right.
people who are really into
Yeah.
UFO stories already. And they found this very interesting because that kind of aligns with demonological beliefs that these evil
Well,
entities have to be invited in.
that's right.
You have to open yourself up to them.
And that's where I was driving to with the behavior. Like, how does the interaction go down? And if you look at people's experiences, you could interpret them as mirroring poltergeist experiences, the high strangers people encounter in like fairy folklore and that sort of thing. They do kind of overlap.
Yeah.
So it really becomes a question then of just how do you interpret these experiences?
Mm-hmm.
Is the extraterrestrial explanation just our modern iteration of the same phenomenon that people have been experiencing through history?
Mm-hmm.
And 200 years ago, it was called demons or fairies or whatever, right?
Yeah. But whether it be demons or extraterrestrials, the Collins Elite do believe they found their motive, their intent.
Oh, okay. And what was that?
They are here to harvest our souls.
Well, that sounds pleasant.
Would you like to talk about this fellow Paul Garrett?
Yeah, I found this account in Nick's book, and it stuck out to me. I'll see if I can just recall by memory. He was, if I recall correctly, in a car accident.
Yeah.
A near fatal car accident.
Well, he was clinically dead for a short time.
Yeah, so I guess technically a fatal car accident,
yeah.
Although he was resuscitated. But when he came back, he had this story of a near-death experience where he didn't describe going into a tunnel of light like you imagined, but he said he had this sensation of falling into blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And that he eventually found himself when he finally stopped falling, when he landed wherever he landed, in this kind of alien landscape where there was this strange blue sand everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it has very typical what you would imagine as hell dimension qualities, like hordes of human beings in agony, suffering, wailing, and pain, and then hundreds and hundreds of flying saucers in the air. And that these flying saucers would then project these green beams down onto the ground, onto these hordes of tormented people, and suck their souls, what he interpreted as their souls.
Yeah, like
these
little green orbs of light. As I was reading it in the book, I kind of pictured, in the Mortal Kombat movie when Shang Tsung is like, your soul is mine, and sucks their soul out in like this green
exactly
light.
Like that.
Yeah.
Exactly like that. That's exactly what I imagined as well. But flying saucers, not Shang Tsung.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after that, immediately after that, I guess the wailing would stop, the pain would stop, but these human bodies that would be left behind would be kind of vacant zombies that would be completely under the control of whatever masters were controlling these UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
But then luckily he was resuscitated, came back to life, and with this horrifying tale of the other side, I guess the other side of the veil as he experienced it.
Yeah, and this story was published in the kind of local newspaper where he was. The Collins Elite, they were very much following any stories like this.
Yeah.
They were following up. So the Collins Elite actually sent someone to meet with him, to interview him under false pretenses. They said they were interviewing veterans regarding post-traumatic stress. I guess this guy had formerly served in the military,
Yeah.
and they interviewed him. And one of the things they found with his stories after this had happened is this fellow Paul Garrett would experience poltergeist-like activity in his
Hmm.
home,
Yeah.
and he would experience visions of what he described as very gray alien-looking creatures
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
rest of his life.
I recall, yeah, he had one account where he woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, and there was what he described as like a gray-skinned goblin
Yeah,
standing at the end of his bed that then
yeah.
vanished.
And he said what he feared is that he had been to the other side and he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to see.
Yeah.
And he'd
And
been followed back.
He had drawn the ire
Yeah.
of whatever these entities were, and they didn't like that he had escaped their grasp. Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
He'd gotten their attention. This intrigued the Collins elite because it very much aligned with their view that demons need some sort of invitation.
Mhm.
They're constrained otherwise. You have
Yeah.
to invite them or get their attention. So now this fellow Paul Garrett had their attention, and now they're with him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And so that just immediately makes me think of this kind of new age movement we have in the world today. And are you familiar with the CE5 stuff, like Stephen Greer's whole thing?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and Grush, the whistleblower, most recent Grush, he's involved in this as well.
I'm not a
Right.
fan of Stephen Greer, to be honest.
Me either, right? And they call this, what do they call it? Psionics. They've
Yeah,
got this
yeah.
new term called psionics, but basically they get together in groups and they have this protocol where it's basically kind of spiritually meditating to call these UFOs to come visit them.
Hmm.
But it really does smack of kind of a new age occultism ritual in order to evoke these things. And apparently it works. Apparently people do have experiences. I won't comment to whether that's true or not, but it does make you pause and go, should they really be doing this? Because Greer comes from a camp of the aliens are all peaceful and they're more evolved than us, and they don't want us to make war, and it's all love and light, that sort of thing.
Yeah. See, according to the Collins elite, that's a trick.
Yeah.
It's a trap. They're tricking you into inviting them in.
Yeah. So they could be engaging in something extremely dangerous
Yeah.
and completely ignorant of it.
But even aside from macro level things like Dr. Stephen Greer and psionics, as he calls it, there have been some larger scale things that look like almost like a Trojan horse, like an attempt by someone or something to trick the society at large to invite something in.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Vrillon TV broadcast hijacking of 1977?
I have. I don't recall the specifics off the top of my head.
So, like, really quick, this was in 1977 in the UK. It was during like a local news broadcast,
Okay.
and
Yes.
and all of a sudden the broadcast is interrupted, and this really kind of distorted voice starts speaking on the TV broadcast. It says, "This is the voice of Rillon, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom, as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this planet, your Earth." And he then proceeds to say all this very new agey stuff about how humanity has to change their ways or it will be destroyed.
Yeah.
Says very specifically...
Disarm all your nuclear weapons.
Yeah, it says very specifically to evolve and forsake all weapons.
Yeah. In other words, all means of self-defense.
Yeah. Now, this was very quickly dismissed as a hoax, although they never caught the perpetrators.
Yeah.
It was a prank. Someone with a lot of technical knowledge had hijacked the TV broadcast. That's how it was explained. Now,
Right.
the Collins elite, however, behind closed doors, were seeing something else. They were seeing an attempt to almost test the waters.
Right.
What can we trick people into?
Yeah. How susceptible are the masses going to be to manipulation?
Yeah. And this is very much the lens the Collins elite always looks through. Like even things like the Roswell incident, they interpret as kind of a Trojan horse. Supposedly, the story goes, the US government retrieved some sort of alien technology from this crash, which
Yeah.
they reverse engineered with the
Yeah.
help of our friend Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
And it's a Trojan horse. It's a gift they're giving.
Yeah, it was a quote unquote crash, not
Yeah.
maybe an accident, but with the intention, the specific intention of putting that technology into the hands of people that were then going to take it and dissect it and start using it. But really, they're just opening themselves up
Yeah.
to the control and influence of these other dimensional demonic creatures.
Yeah, and it is very interesting. A little far-fetched. This is just me being conspiratorial.
Totally.
But
Yeah, we're parsing out the theories.
but
Yeah, gotcha.
it's interesting to note that kind of immediately after the Roswell crash, where we supposedly began reverse engineering alien technology, is the invention of the transistor,
Right.
which leads to the invention of the integrated circuit. You know, they talk about how from the Roswell crash, this so-called memory metal was recovered.
Yeah.
This metal that was very malleable but would immediately snap back into its previous shape.
Yeah, like memory foam,
Yeah,
but extremely strong.
Yeah, and you know, it almost seems like the integrated circuit was almost our attempt to reverse engineer that. Because an integrated circuit, it's like a little wafer of metal that is kind of a lattice pattern on it, engraved at the nanometer level,
Yeah.
that remembers. It's got switches and logical pathways embedded or etched into it. You see things like that being developed immediately after the Roswell crash, and this huge explosion in information technology as a result.
Yeah.
An incredible
Which is
explosion
created,
of technology.
which has created the mass information network that we all use every day that has very much been turned against us, that lies to us and manipulates our behavior on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, look at AI.
If we had a video for this episode, you'd be putting that tinfoil hat on me right now. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at like AI right now. You know, AI controls so much of what we see and what we do.
Yeah.
You know, you are probably watching this on YouTube because an AI algorithm recommended
Decided
it
you
to
should see it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's interesting. But so long as we're kind of going down the rabbit hole of various conspiracy theories, something that also occurred to me reading this book, talk about Trojan horses, the way Nick Redfern got led down this garden path, it occurred to me, or it kept occurring to me as I was reading, that this entire thing could be a disinformation setup. You know, he was very kind of intentionally given a starting point. Go look here. Someone then reached back to him that knew how he got in contact with them in the first place. I'm losing all the names now because we're going too far back in the episode. My brain just doesn't hang on to information. But do you know what I mean?
What was the first question they asked him when he called the Air Force Base? Do you intend to publish this?
Yeah. And then they say goodbye. But then what's he get? A phone call a couple days later from someone very willing to talk to him and gives him the name the Collins Elite, tells him everything about it. So is this entire story in the public sphere because somebody wanted it to be there?
Maybe.
Is it in itself a deception?
It could be. You know, it's interesting because as I was reading this book, as I was reading through this narrative, I kept thinking back to Project Bluebeam.
Yeah.
And how similar some of this stuff starts sounding like Project Bluebeam.
Yeah.
Because even, you know, what's the end game? What's the end
Bluebeam is supposed to be a false flag alien invasion / second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
But not the second coming of Christ, actually the invocation of the Antichrist. Is that right?
Yeah.
Isn't that exactly what we're talking about here?
Pretty much. But like what's the end game here as described by Nick Redfern in his investigations? You know, the end game, according to the Collins Elite, is, I mean, we keep talking about how these entities, these extraterrestrials or demons, whatever they are, keep trying to deceive humanity into inviting them in, giving them more influence.
Yeah.
What's the end game? To engineer a global nuclear war, which will unleash chaos, death, and corruption of the soul on a mass scale, basically to prepare society to be led by them. That sounds very Project Bluebeam to me.
Yeah. It also sounds like, they're probably winning. If
Yeah,
this is real, if there's any truth to this at all, then it sounds like their plans are going on right on schedule.
yeah. But what's really disturbing, it's claimed that in the early 2000s, just after 9/11, elements of the Collins elite, there's some fractures forming in this group by this point. Some
Right.
elements of the Collins elite and some elements of the Bush administration considered basically fighting fire with fire. They wanted to basically immunize humanity from this demonic influence by enforcing a strict Christian doctrine
Right.
in the country. And the way they were going to do this is through a false flag attack. I'm going to pull it up here because I want to quote it directly from the book. This is Nick Redfern talking. As I sat and listened ever more intently, the man informed me that an idea was discussed for a covert arm of the U.S. military that was being cleverly swamped with ideas to make it seem justified, to explode a small atomic device within a major U.S. city in the near future, or to encourage it, or to let it happen. The result would be martial law, nightly curfews, the complete deconstruction of freedom of speech, the total closing of borders, and widespread surveillance of the populace. Then, with the media controlled, and with the population held in the vice-like grip of those who drew up that overwhelming atrocity known as the Patriot Act, the collective forces within the military, intelligence community, and government would play their ace card. On a date still to be designated, the skies of North America would be filled with huge images of Jesus Christ, or at least with imagery that reflects how he is generally portrayed within biblical publications. But the man told me if the operation ever comes to pass, it would all be a terrible ruse.
So that's exactly Bluebeam. So their plan to fight the alien Project Bluebeam plan was to do their own,
Yes,
but with the intention of driving people towards Christianity
yes,
for their own good, but using the exact same methodology.
yeah.
That is
Apparently,
so twisted.
yeah.
Pardon
So
me? That's incredibly twisted.
that's very twisted.
Let's use their exact evil plan, but we're going to do the exact same thing,
Fire with fire.
but for good,
Yeah.
for people's own good.
So apparently this
Yeah.
plan never went beyond the discussion phases.
Right.
But it's a little disturbing to think it was even discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. I just really hope they had something else on the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that wasn't their primary option, or it's the first thing that occurred to them and they just went with it.
Yeah.
But it does sound like government logic, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of this sounds really crazy. But again, I will point to things like MK Ultra, Operation
Yeah.
Often, and Project Stargate. These things happened. Actually, the Collins Elite at one point became very concerned with Operation Often. This Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, I'm probably pronouncing that
Gottlieb?
wrong. Yeah, this CIA chemist who was heading up Operation Often. Basically, it was basically a subset of MK Ultra. It was attempts to experiment with mediumship and psychic phenomenon. There were attempts made to contact and debrief dead operatives.
Yeah. I found that really, really interesting.
There was work being done
Yeah.
with occultists to actually place curses on foreign leaders.
Yeah.
And this was all at the height of Cold War paranoia.
Yeah.
But the Collins elite became very concerned by these kinds of operations. This is the U.S. government flirting with the devil almost.
Yeah.
Forming an alliance of sorts with these entities, these demonic entities, to make some
and
short-term gains during the Cold War.
it's worth noting, I think, that Hitler tried to do the exact same thing. The Third Reich tried to use occult black magic to their advantage to win the war.
Yeah. It makes you wonder. You know, we know about these really weird operations now that happened during the Cold War, and we know about them, you know, due to whistleblowers and due to things like the Freedom of Information Act. And over time, things get declassified because they're just not worth classifying
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
They're over and done with. But it makes you wonder what kind of weird stuff is going on right now
Yeah.
that we don't know about.
That's still under the auspices of top secret or classified. Yeah.
But the Collins Elite supposedly does still operate to this day,
Yeah.
though disturbingly enough, their mission has become less about investigation and more about preparation.
Right. Because they believe these
This
plans are well underway, and
this
it's
end
inevitable
game
now.
is coming. How
Yeah.
do we prepare ourselves, prepare society
Yeah.
for this spiritual battle that is unfolding?
Right. Right. It's very biblical.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're getting to the point where we should start thinking about wrapping up. Do you have any final thoughts on all this? What's your personal take after
You know,
rooting through all this?
I think looking at the world, I feel like there is a spiritual war going on of some form.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And it gets a little muddy who are the good guys,
Yeah, I would say that's becoming an increasingly confusing thing to nail down. Is who
Yeah.
are the good guys in this day and age? I couldn't tell you. I agree with those final points. But fascinating rabbit hole to go down. Great book.
Yeah.
Final Events by Nick Redfern. I highly recommend picking it up. It's
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Really fun read.
Yeah.
Nick Redfern is very prolific.
You got to meet him at one point, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's an old acquaintance because he attended all three of the Paradigm Symposiums in the kind of mid 2000s. And he was always a presenter, but he was one of the presenters that you would find at the hotel bar hanging out with all the attendees after the fact, where not everybody would, right?
Yeah.
You never saw Van Daniken at the bar, or you would, but he'd have his little entourage around. You couldn't get near him. But Nick Redfern was always there kind of with the everyday people, and he was super approachable, super down to earth, super easy to sit down, and because it went on for 3 years, we got to recognize each other and, would have a beer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really great guy. He's very kind of British punk rock. I just heard, apparently he's in poor health because he writes for Mysterious Universe. He does blog posting for Mysterious Universe. And I guess he just recently went off the radar because of some very severe health problems. So hopefully he's all right. And our thoughts go out to him. But yeah, very prolific. If you look up his catalog, the guy drops about a book a week. Like he's got hundreds of books. So very prolific author in this field. But definitely one of my favorites of his that I've read, Final Events. Definitely worth picking up. So yeah, I think with that, we can probably wrap it up.
We always forget this.
Like and subscribe, those things.
We've got to...
Yeah. Right. We were supposed to do it.
No, I am so
ago.
thankful for all the people that have subscribed recently. Like it's been kind of overwhelming just seeing how many people subscribe to our little show. So thank you so much. And if you've listened to this point and you want to hear more, please give us a follow or a subscribe, and feel free to give us a like if you think we deserve it. It actually helps us out a lot when you hit the like button or leave a comment.
We're a very small outlet, right?
Yeah.
So those things do go a long way for us, particularly now, because that's how we attain growth. That's how we get our brand in front of the eyes and ears of new people to have a listen to us. So yeah, very much appreciated.
And when
Thanks
you hit
for coming
that
along.
like button, the little AI algorithm that controls everything you see will decide maybe someone else should see this podcast. I'll put it in front of them. So yeah, it does help us a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, great. With that, we'll leave it, and we'll see everybody next week for our last episode of the season. We might have a couple little surprises we'll drop randomly, hopefully over the break before we come back in kind of mid-January. So keep an eye out for those. But those are just kind of bonus things we thought would be fun to work on. But yeah, next week will be our kind of season wrap-up episode. So that one will be a lot of fun. It'll be a little less formal than our normal episodes. Hopefully just a lot of fun and kind of unpacking the year we've had, the wild ride we've been on. So looking forward to that. So have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.
This is the voice of Allah, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now to service them as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in a great awakening as the planet passes into a new age of Aquarius. The new age will be a time of great peace and liberation for your race, but only your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgments. Be still now, and listen, for your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution, if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this, and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept the
makes a kitchen foil makes one this wide. Many go as wide as this. Then they run out.
Here now, the voice of Rimon, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. Be aware also that there are many false prophets and guides at present operating on your world. They will suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and will put it to evil ends, giving you worthless dross in return. Your inner divine self will protect you from this. You must learn to be sensitive to the voice within that can tell you what is true and what is learn to listen to the voice of truth which is within you.
It's such a
Lead yourself. This is our message.
really appreciate